Hello. Today we are going to talk about women in STEM, why women are or are not interested in STEM. I have been considering making a video on this topic for quite a while. I've always had mixed feelings about making it, partially because I just in fact have mixed feelings about STEM and women in STEM. Sometimes it makes me too frustrated to even consider making the video. But a few months ago, I listened to a podcast that talked about this, and ever since then it's just been a little bit nagging in my brain, so I thought that I would finally just talk about it. First of all, I want to say this is not like hate directed at the people who made the podcast or the guest on the podcast. I have followed the hosts of the podcast for a while for fitness content, and I was trying out listening to their podcast. And they had a guest who I'm not familiar with, but apparently he's quite a popular podcaster in the UK. There was a lot of stuff in this episode that I find extremely problematic. Not all of those things are in my wheelhouse, and this is not about those. I did just want to mention that they exist. Also, I'm going to be using extremely gendered terms in this video. I'm sorry, that is just kind of the conversation. Okay, so we are just going to watch some clips of this, and I'll kind of pause it when I have something that I want to say. But then at the end, I do have more of an existential discussion about STEM, so...
Isn't this whole perception that like an empowering businesswoman doesn't come across like confident, she comes across very intimidating, and a lot of guys don't
resonate with that.
Resonate with that.
Absolutely, but
100%.
this is desire again as well. You're right. It is unfair that a woman that decides to be forceful and powerful and disagreeable is seen as a hard-nosed bitch, whereas a man that does that is seen to be a go-getter.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fundamental low-level sexism that's going on here that presumes that what men do is correct, and this has been imbibed by women and then fed back out again. Why is it that femininity isn't something that you should strive to be within a business? The subtext of somebody saying it's not fair that women can't be hard-nosed bitches, can't be like aggressive in business without being called like arseholes. What that presumes is that being hard-nosed is desirable.
So I actually mostly agree with him here. I have an entire video about this, about how women should not have to modify their speech patterns to be like men in order to be taken seriously. I disagree with him that, taking a hard line on something is not feminine, because I feel like that's what he's saying. I do disagree with him there. And I also just don't think that this is so much inherent gender differences as it is patriarchy versus not.
It takes a male frame of the world and says that's what we should be aiming for. I don't think that it is, not all the time. And yeah, that's a weird way that this sort of,
it is.
This fundamental subtext of like men is what we should aim for. Women being able to earn more, women being able to do these things. It's like, look.
So first of all, he keeps saying things like low-level sexism or a subtext. It's not low-level, it's just sexism. Additionally, the idea of women earning more. It is not that women are naturally interested in low-paying fields and men are naturally interested in high-paying fields. The fields that men go into become highly paid. The fields that women go into become low paid. If something started out female dominated and becomes male dominated, the salaries go up. If something starts out male dominated and becomes female dominated, the salaries go down. The problem is not that women are desiring to earn more. The problem is that women are being undervalued. People wanting to make a decent living is not a male-driven thing. Just how everything should be. And unfortunately, going into male-dominated fields is a great way to do that because society values men. Anyway.
Women being able to earn more, women being able to do these things. It's like, look, that's fine if you want to do it. But a lot of women are very, very happy building a family, being like amazing homeowners, going into businesses that allow them to work with people, not things. We need to get more women in STEM. What if they fucking hate science, technology, engineering, and maths?
Okay, so I'm going to just quote some studies. I will link them. You can look at them if you want. So girls are just as interested in math and science as boys until they kind of get to that age where they learn they're not supposed to be. There are communities that they've done studies in where women, adult women, are well represented in STEM. So the mothers and the friends' mothers and other adult women in the area. And when that occurs, girls stay just as interested and take just as many AP, like physics and math classes, as boys do all the way through. Additionally, there are a lot of complicated factors at work. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the discussions of, boys and girls being given different toys and taught to play in very, very different ways. It can also go as far as how children are praised in the classroom and at home. And now we'll get into the counter argument.
What if they want to work with people, as most, on average, women do?
So this makes me cringe a lot to hear it, but there is something to what he's saying. There's a meta-analysis that backed up this statement. They did find that women were more interested in things that were like social and compassionate and everything, and men were more interested in things and technology. Even for countries that are pretty much as equal of societies as we know of having right now, like Sweden and Finland. So this is where the crux of my issue with this whole argument is STEM about things, not people? My opinion is that it is right now, but that it should not be. Now, before anyone comes after me in the comments saying that clearly I don't know what technology or engineering is if I think that it's not about things, I do have a degree in engineering. I know what it is. So, engineering and technology, which by the way are the only fields out of STEM that are still majority male in most cases, so this whole women don't go into STEM thing is actually, for the most part, not true. But it is still true for computer science and most forms of engineering. So anyway, engineering and technology are responsible for almost 100% of our lived experience on this planet in the modern world. Every single thing that you do, unless you live in the most unbelievably remote location, is impacted by STEM in a major way. Even going to parks, engineering went into that. Can we honestly imagine that if for the past 50, 100, 200 years, we've been viewing the professions that created our entire experience of living as something that is about things, not people? Can we imagine that that has not had a negative impact on us? A few years ago, I read the book Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez, and although this book has major issues, mostly that it is not intersectional in literally any way, it was still massively eye-opening as far as the day-to-day things that go on that we may or may not realize are discriminatory. So it is about the way that data and design just completely ignores the existence of women, and by extension is detrimental to us because men are considered the default, whether purposely or inadvertently. Women are quite literally engineered out of the design of almost everything. This includes relatively minor things like office temperatures being set for the comfort of men, up to things like snow clearing schedules, prioritizing forms of transportation that are predominantly male, while forms of transportation that are used more by women might be ignored, even to things as dramatic as seatbelts not working as well for women, and diseases not being identified properly, medications not being tested on women prior to being released to the public. And this is not just for women by any stretch. I haven't read it yet, but the book Race After Technology is a book about how technology, both purposely and inadvertently, is biased and functions as a tool of white supremacy. I do want to clarify here that I'm not saying that all of this is just because men have been in charge. I don't think that our society is serving men very well either. STEM in its current form, possibly more so than any other field besides like finance, was created to further capitalism. Innovation is generally just a way for the richest people to make more money. That is why adding diversity does not work, because it is the whole structure that is the problem. And you can't just add more types of people and expect that to fix the problem. We have to reimagine everything about STEM in addition to reimagining everything about the world. Designing our entire built environment should never have been viewed as something that was about things, not people. This is also why I kind of shake my head anytime someone mentions the fact that women aren't interested in STEM due to evolutionary reasons. For one thing, I reject the entire premise of this. I think that anytime someone talks about evolution as a reason for something, it's usually just a really, really lazy explanation. We don't go around and hit people over the head with rocks for taking our food anymore. Why would we expect that, behavior shouldn't have changed? That is the point of evolution, is that everything changes. But anyway, even taking that aside and embracing this argument, women have been into STEM from the start. Gathering food is science, it's botany, it's nutrition. Taking care of babies, elders, and sick people is medicine, also nutrition, also human growth and development. Getting water, which women have literally always done and still do in most parts of the world today, is science, engineering. If it is true that women only want to work with people on average, then STEM should have been an ideal place to do that, because everything in STEM should have always been focused on how it served people and the planet. Of course, there will always be parts of it that involve number crunching or designing, but the idea that we ever could have or should have separated these products or designs or technologies or codes or utilities or anything away from the people that are using them is, I think, probably most of the reason why women aren't interested, and also a major reason that our world does not function the way that it should. I'm not saying that if women had been involved in STEM 50 years ago that we wouldn't have climate change, but I am saying the idea that you can separate things from people, or things from the planet, or things from animals, is probably a huge reason that we have climate change today. And yes, the egotistical, white supremacist, patriarchal society that we have was an integral part of that. And I also don't want to downplay the very, very, very real layer that I have completely ignored of discrimination and microaggressions and macroaggressions that are experienced all the time by women in STEM, particularly women who are not white. That is an extremely real aspect of this. I did just ignore that entirely because that's a whole separate topic. So I would love to hear thoughts if you have any on this subject, and if you'd like to hear from me more, then subscribe. Thank you.